Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of 100 Acres of Ink. I'm Teagan. I'm here with Chris,
Hey,
and it's been a
everybody.
couple weeks. We got busy, and I don't know. We record these on Friday nights, which doesn't make it always the most convenient when we're traveling to North American continentals and playing an LCQ on Friday, and
Yep.
then doing other stuff that night with friends and with other people. And you were attending a whole other con. Uh,
Yeah, it was really fun. I got to see a bunch of friends, and thankfully, nobody got hurt by the fires, which is great. I have a lot of family down in LA, and as far as I'm aware, everybody made it out safe.
that's great.
So, yeah, good to hear.
Yeah, it was kind of a wild weekend with the fires and everything going on, and I'm sure we can talk about it here in a minute. Um, but I'm glad we got back to recording an episode. There's a lot to talk about, a lot for us to talk about. I know a lot of other podcasts have been talking about stuff for the past couple weeks, but we haven't really been able to join into some of the conversations. So I'm looking forward to talking about some of Continentals tonight and
Mhm.
also talking about set championships. And why don't we just jump into that? What have you been up to in Lorcana? I know both you and I played in a couple set championships.
Yeah, think I played games of Berkeley on last Saturday. I didn't do too terribly great. Wasn't really my weekend, and then I kind of pulled it back. Sunday, I played at Victory Point, which is our locals, uh, and I won the whole thing. I won me a championship set mat. Yeah, it's super cool, and the art is really pretty, and I'm really excited that I got it.
That's
Uh,
super great.
yeah, it's been really fun.
I played in both of those as well, but my success was kind of inverted with you. I did pretty well at Games of Berkeley, made top eight. I was
Hmm.
second seed going into top eight, but just bricked in game three
Hmm.
pretty bad into Charles.
Hmm.
Charles playing RP. I was also playing RP, so the mirror match, and Charles wasn't going to not take advantage of me bricking a little bit. So
Yeah.
lost game three in a pretty tight match. But I'm not playing on Saturday. I do have plans to play again on Sunday and give it another shot. But I've got one scar to my name so far, and we'll see how I do the rest of the month.
That's good.
Let's talk about our LCQ experience a little bit.
Yeah.
You made it a little bit further than I did. I lost in the first round. I played green purple,
Hmm.
a list that was kind of a midpoint in between Mo's list
Hmm.
that ended up making top 16 the
Hmm.
next day and Artabax's list. I was playing a little bit more lower to the ground, but still playing Genie, Elsa Bell.
Hmm.
Um, I was playing Prince Philip instead of White Rose. And deck was great, I think, for the most part. I was on the play in round one against Red Blue and just kind of stalled out. I didn't see a single genie. I inked a go go on round one or in turn one and
Hmm.
never saw another one. I had like four turns where if I had drawn a go go, I would have won the game. And ended up like playing a rabbit, bouncing a rabbit, playing a rabbit, crashing a rabbit, and just not seeing go go, not
Hmm.
seeing the cards I needed. So I was a little disappointed, but I think for me, looking back on it, I think I played pretty well,
Hmm.
and it was just a moment of variance, and I think I've gotten to the place now with the game where I can kind of say that looking back on
Yeah.
a certain performance. I think sometimes there were games or tournaments where I could look back and not really know why I lost, whether it was because of a misplay or because of something. So I feel pretty good about the fact that I could just look back at that and go, oh yeah, no, that's just variance. Like I was in the right spot with the right cards with the right deck, and just didn't draw what I needed. And that's going to happen in a card
Yeah.
game. Variance is going to happen to you.
Yeah, no, that's one of the reasons we play card games, right? It's as opposed to something like chess where you can basically predetermine all your moves and understand what's going on basically every step of the game. Is part of it is going to be variance, and sometimes you'll get hands that are really good, and sometimes you'll get hands that are very mid, and you kind of have to play your way out of them. Honestly, that's really good. Yeah, same. I'm glad to be at a place where it's much easier to be like, okay, so I played really well, and this is kind of where I got to, or hey, I got hit by variance and that happened. I did a little bit better than you. I managed to make it to the second round. I think round one I played Ruby Amethyst, and I did pretty well in both games. I did get a warning on myself because I was playing a little too fast that second game. There was a moment where I had Diablo on the board for a couple of turns, and so I'd been drawing extra cards. My opponent then removed said Diablo, and without thinking about it, I went to draw a card on their turn. So, of course, as soon as it happened, I raised my hand. I called Judge it myself because I wasn't supposed to do that. Good call to, especially in a high level setting. Nerves are going to be a thing, but try to pay attention to what you're doing. And obviously, if you have something like that, it's worth trying to be honest, raising your hand, calling a judge, be like, "Hey, I messed this up. What do I do?" Thankfully, the judge was like, "Hey, no worries. You're aware of what card you added to your hand, so we'll just add it back to the deck. We'll randomize the deck. You'll take a warning for that." And I said, "That's perfectly fine. I fully understand that I messed that up." And they were really kind about it. Um, it didn't impact the rest of my game, thankfully. Um, and so I proceeded to win that round. And then round two, I played Purple Steel, which I hadn't actually had a lot of practice against, and was not a deck I was expecting. Like going into that weekend, we were aware Purple Steel could be a deck. It was probably going to be a pretty good deck. Just it definitely wasn't what I was expecting, especially after like seeing the first couple turns because they did the standard purple, ink a card, play a one drop that cantrips, ink another card, play another card that cantrips. I was like, okay, I think I know what I'm playing. And then turn three dropped to Lawrence, and I was like, well, nope, this is definitely not what I thought I was playing.
This is
Uh,
bad.
this is bad. This is bad. I have kept a hand that is not good here. This is bad. And then, yeah, so I think I played as well as I could that first game. The second game, I know there was I can very easily recall the turn that kind of cost me the game or cost me the comeback that I was coming on. My opponent, for a moment, had been up, I think, like something like 16 lore to nothing. There was a couple of turns where I was coming back because I had amassed a Cricky and a Calhoun and a Smee, so I was very much gaining lore. There was a turn that ended up where I had a Pluto in a hand or a Muses in hand, and I couldn't decide which of these to play. And not this is where not knowing the matchup as well kind of cost me, because instead of developing the Muses, um, because I was assuming there was probably an Elsa in his hand, given that he was playing a lot of purple, I played the Pluto, figuring I could protect my 5 power questing and continue my comeback, which then cost me because on the next turn he then played Zeus, removed my Cricky, which means I was down 3 lore, and made it very hard for me to come back. And then in later turns, he had a couple of 1 and 2 drops, which if I had kept the Muses, the later songs that I'd drawn would have also given me more value. I still think I played as well as I could, knowing the information that I had. But it is definitely one of those things where, like, hey, a little bit of extra prep for this matchup because we had figured this was a thing going into it, might have saved me a game. But
Sure.
honestly, yeah, it was a ridiculously diverse meta. It was super cool for the most part. That we got to play, and then we got to go to LCQs and see a bunch of people do really well. I know a couple of our friends. I know, like, think Wally and Kurt, respectively, made it decently far. I think Kurt made it to the 4th round. Wally made it all the way to round 5, which was insane.
Yep.
So, honestly, I think in terms of like play skill, it was a really good weekend for us.
Yeah, I think overall, like the Bay did really well. Charles, who's also from the Bay, made it to round 5 and ended up winning his LCQ, and going into nationals. Batsu from Non-Inkables made it to round
Yeah.
4, where he lost against Charles. So a little Bay on Bay violence, but yeah, I think overall, for community that maybe doesn't have the kind of high level experience of,
Mhm.
say, Atlanta, the community there with like Zan and No I'm Not and other people.
Mhm.
I mean, we have Ed, like Ed, has done very, very well. Chris did very well in Las Vegas, but um, I feel like we don't have quite the same centralized skill base in the Bay Area. I was pretty proud of how we did in the Bay Area and the showing we had over the course of the weekend.
Yeah.
Um, our friend Ben ended up taking like top four in the competitive constructed on Sunday, and won a Cinderella mat and a case of cards. So it was really cool to see some really big successes coming out of the Bay.
Yeah, it's super cool.
Let's jump into some headlines, and boy, there are a lot of them. Um, the first one, we have set 8 release dates. Going to be in May. So
Mhm.
March 7 is going to be the hobby store release for Archazia's Island, and then later in March it's going to be the main release, and then Reign of Jafar will be May 30th and will be everywhere June 6th. So that will be kind of the summer set, and then we got a ninth set announced question
Mhm.
mark
Mhm.
called Fabled, which is going to be Q3 2025. I really like the look of Fabled. It has kind of a little bit more old timey, kind of faded art, and I don't know, like it makes me feel a little bit more like traditional Mickey Mouse. So I'm kind of excited about that set.
Yeah, no, it looks really great. You can see kind of the like Prince and the Pauper, Brave Little Tailor style artwork. Then you've got the kind of like carousel vibe. It's very cool, and it's got a kind of old school vibe to it. I'm definitely interested in the sort of tagline for it, which is "Welcome to the story." I wonder if we're getting more of the older like fable style stories or the old like folktale styles like Disney stories. Maybe we're just getting a bunch of classics, a la um,
Black
Legend,
Cauldron,
Black
right?
Cauldron, Legend of Sleepy Hollow, things like that. Who knows? It's
Yeah.
super interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that's a thought. I also wonder if like there's going to be another like gateway type product
Hmm.
that will come out, because I think Gateway came out with Shimmering Skies,
Hmm.
which would be the same set, right? Because uh, Reign of Jafar is the Ursula set, and
Yep.
so you'll have like the Illumineers quest, and then maybe there'll be a new kind of entry product that will come out alongside Fabled,
Sure.
to kind of welcome people into the story. I'm starting to see a little bit of a pattern, as we'll kind of get to here in a minute,
Hmm.
but it sounds like we're going to have some new mechanics in Arcasia's Island. Well, Arcasia's Island lines up with Into the Inklands, and
Hmm.
so it kind of seems like every uh, 4 sets there's going to be kind of this cycle of like maybe a new mechanic with the kind of Q1 set, and then the Q2 set might be this kind of showdown with a villain with a Lumineer's quest, and then the Q3 set is going to have some sort of a introductory product, which I think is cool. It kind of helps people understand what to expect, and I don't know. It seems like there's a lot to look forward to this year.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
Uh, Next, a bunch of changes were made and announced to organized play. The first of which, we're going to say goodbye to Melee, which I know a lot of us have kind of hated Melee. It's not the most reliable platform. But there's going to be a new platform, something specific to Ravensburger, that's going to be powered by Card.io. I know Card.io is also the software that was kind of powering. I can't remember the name of the software, but it was the software that the pack was using for their tournaments.
I
Uh,
think it was actually the Lorcana Play Network, if I'm not
yeah,
mistaken.
Lorcana Play Network. And so I know that's ultimately powered by Card.io
Mhm.
as well. So, um, you know, that sounds interesting. I know there were some problems with some of the early pack tournaments with kind of the scale, so hopefully that's been worked out with Card.io to be able to figure out how to support, bigger organized play, especially around DLCs and championships. There's a bunch of kind of like smaller announcements as part of that too, where like there's going to be a store leaderboard and different stuff, and stores are going to have to obviously onboard onto this new thing.
Mhm.
It sounds like we're still going to be on Melee through the end of Archazia's Island,
Mhm.
and starting to pick this up in Reign of Jafar.
Yeah, I'm wondering actually with the store leaderboards, um, and for those of you who watch this, if you're familiar with what Wizards of the Coast used to do, which was the Wizards Play Network, or the where you had a DCI number, you had a card that was kind of attached to you in an account, and that could kind of track points across different systems. There has been just some general speculation as to whether or not this is going to be something similar, where then you can use those kind of points that you've gathered to earn entry into bigger events, things like the DLC, things like Nationals, which also then, of course, leads to speculation if there's going to be other bigger events like that. Obviously, we don't have a whole bunch of information right now. We're still, at the very least, a few months away from any kind of implementation of this. They're just in the, hey, if you are an organizer or you are a store and you want to sign up, please go here, put your name on this list. Um, and they're very likely to roll out more details as we get them. But still, it's a great change as somebody who occasionally runs our weekly events, and I'm sure Teagan is somebody who runs the weekly
Yeah.
events at one of our locals. We're both extremely happy to see a system that's probably a little more reliable than Melee come into play here. Not that Melee wasn't super useful, just a little unstable sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I will say one of the things I do like about Melee is the ability to like export results into CSVs and then be able to do other sorts of data massaging on them.
Mhm.
We use that with Battle of the Bay to be able to like assign stores and assign teams to everyone so that we
Mhm.
could count points for stores.
Mhm.
And that was very easy just to export stuff and then use a pivot table. And so I'm hoping we'll still be able to do stuff like that.
Yep.
Otherwise, it's going to be a lot harder to do that kind of work for a tournament if you want to do something that way. That's another piece I'm wondering about is like, are we going to be able to sign up for it as organizations that are not affiliated with the store that are wanting to do community tournaments or those kinds of things to
Mhm.
be able to use the software? Um, I think that is something that I'm going to have my eye on, obviously, not just for Battle of the Bay, but, I think that's something that will be really useful for the growth of the game. You spoke a little bit about qualifying into larger events, and I think we're going to have to get there eventually, right? Like,
Mhm.
right now, the DLCs are 2,000 people that rush to click a button in the first 30 seconds that it's available, and that's not super sustainable, right? You want the best competitors competing in these kind of large events, and so having a way for people to kind of earn their way in, whether it's with league points or however else, or qualifiers, that kind of thing, in a more trackable system, I think sounds like a big win.
It also sounds like a little bit. I don't know if this makes any sense, but a little bit. I guess n- nicer is the best word I can think of here, in that you're not trying to have everybody literally jump on the same platform and have it crash immediately, right? This is a little more stable in that you can have kind of people gradually get there, buy their tickets, figure it out. And then obviously, yeah, if time comes to and it's like, oh, hey, we still have a bunch of space, great. We can release a bunch of extra tickets and be like, hey, you want to still come in? We'll still have space. Come buy your tickets, right? It's a little less hectic than everybody tries to get in at the same exact moment, and then you have people who get their tickets, and people who have to sit on a wait list for months and months and months, and they don't know if they're going to do it, so it's hard to plan, it's hard to like figure out the logistics for travel and everything. So here's hoping for more implementation of something like that, just so it makes it a little easier on people.
A few other announcements kind of made in this same post. One is around pre-releases. We're going to get official pre-releases 1 week before the major release date. This is going to get changed because hobby stores were getting product 2 weeks before,
Mhm.
and then we're kind of having drafts and sealed events leading up to the official release. So we're going to get official pre-releases. I'm wondering if that's going to come with some sort of pre-release product that they'll announce that will be kind of 6-pack bundles, similar to how other games do it, like with Star Wars I know does that, and
Mhm.
Magic I know does that, and Pokemon I know has like the build and battle kind of product. So I'm wondering if we're going to see something in that vein for Lorcana to kind of support this style of play. It would also make sense for these kind of larger events that are having large, sealed or draft, to be able to just kind of have that product instead of having to like rubber band 6 packs together to pass out to people, which is what was largely happening at DLCs and um, at nationals. But yeah, so official pre-releases, you're going to have to sign up. They also announced as part of that there's going to be like buy a box promos with every new set going out. I think the first one of that was the Bucky promo, which they released that way. Um, or I guess not the promo, but the
The
errata.
errata.
Yeah. Um, so that's going to be interesting to try to incentivize people to buy from their local LGSs.
Mhm.
It seems like you're going to get those more for like OP stores rather than if you go buy a box from Target or whatever.
Mhm.
Like you're going to have to buy a box from your local to get that box topper. Um, Go
I'm
ahead.
wondering if yeah, no, I'm wondering if those are gonna be I don't see them doing this because they haven't done it for the previous sets, but obviously the previous sets were running under a previous model. Um, I'm wondering if the buy a box promos will simply be alternate art of the cards, or if they're going to be like unique. Hey, this is a card you can only get from a buy a box. Because that was a downfall of something that happened to Magic, where you got kind of unique, individual, powerful cards that you could only get as buy a box promos, which it caused some terrible ripple effects in the game. So here's hoping they're just really cool, pretty alternate arts, and not format warping cards.
I mean, I would have to imagine that's the way that they're going. I think, Lorcana doesn't seem to be locking powerful cards behind even rarity, right?
Mhm.
Like uncommon cards seem to be some of the most powerful and playable cards that we see in the game. Um, Whereas legendaries are often unplayable and don't really have a huge impact on the meta. Um,
Here's
I
looking at
think,
you, Emerald Hercules, with the ward and the paying to deal damage. You could have
yeah,
been so much better.
in the Hades and every steel legendary to be released other than Robin Hood and Beast. Uh, yeah. I think the other thing I was thinking about is like we are seeing a much more diversity of promos as of late. So
Mhm.
the Costco exclusive promo, we're having the Lilo Escape Artist alternate art that's going to be a part of the like 6-pack or 5-pack gift set that's going to be coming out as part of Arcasia's Island.
Mhm.
So it wouldn't surprise me to see it something more in the vein of that.
Mhm.
I think they're realizing that people are interested in alternate arts, and I know that's kind of one of the large pieces of feedback that the community has had. Even the kind of pack opening experience for collectors is not as fun as some other games because you only have enchanteds as your quote unquote hits, and those are a pretty low pull rate. Legendaries and foils are kind of the only things to strive for, and those just look fairly normal. So maybe that is a direction we're headed. I don't know if we'll see pack composition start to change at some point and additional alternate arts be introduced. I think in general that would be good for the game. I think um, it's one of the reasons why opening One Piece is so fun. I don't even I've never really watched One Piece. I started it. I'm like 80 episodes into it. But just opening One Piece cards is really fun. The cards are really beautiful. There's lots of different alternate arts, lots of
Mhm.
different kind of special treatments, and we don't really have that in Lorcana. So I think this will be, maybe the first move in that direction where we're going to start to have some of these promos that are more unique potentially. Um, Speaking of promos, with Set Championship, they're making a big change. So Top 8 is going to continue to get a foil promo, but
Mhm.
there's going to be 40 participation non-foil promos that are going to be passed out to stores. And the way that they say this is that they're supposed to go to the first 40 people who pre-register
Mhm.
for a Set Championship, try to encourage people to sign up early. And I think that's great. I think there's been some disappointment about this announcement, in part because it seems like they're also getting rid of the second place playmat. And I know that's actually a lot of people's favorite. They prefer that over the one with the champion scrawled all over it.
Mhm.
Um, but I have to imagine it's really about cost, and if they're adding more promos to the Set Championship thing, they need to cut cost as part of it somewhere else, and so they're cutting out that second place playmat. I think, the thing that kind of stands out to me though is it probably is going to feel pretty bad if you make it to the finals and you lose. Um, you're not going to walk away with the playmat and you get the same thing as the person that came in eighth place, even though you won two more games. So
Mhm.
I think there's been a little bit of backlash with that decision, but I think overall this is a positive change from my perspective. I'm excited to have more alternate arts around. I think it would be even cooler if these non-foil promos are different than the Set Championship promo. But I think they'll probably just be the same card, just a non-foil version of it.
Sure.
But that means that we are again falling more into consistency with the DLCs, right? DLCs, it's
Mhm.
fairly easy to get those non-foil promos, to get the Rapunzels, the Cinderellas, the Baymax, the Kuzco. But to get the foil versions, it's much harder.
Mhm.
I like that model. I think we're going to get to see more beautiful arts played in the game, and that's always a plus in
Yeah.
my book. This one is probably the biggest the biggest headline today. It was announced that uh, we're gonna have dual ink cards in Arcasia's Island. We got kind of a tease about new tricks, and
Mhm. Mhm.
it sounds like this is a new trick. We've got here a bell card being shown off. This bell card is a 9 cost inkable red blue card. Um, Both ruby and sapphire. It's a 7/7 Floodborn Hero Princess Inventor Shift 7. For each item card in your discard, you pay 1 ink less to play this character using her shift ability. She quests for 3, and then whenever you quest, you may put up to 3 item cards from your discard on the bottom of your deck to gain 1 lore for each item card moved in this way. And this card screams red blue. I think they could have printed this just as a sapphire card potentially,
Mhm.
but it's then could be played in sapphire steel as well.
Mhm.
And I don't see any real reason from a mechanic standpoint that this couldn't be in sapphire steel. But I think what I like about this is you can print more powerful cards that are now just restricted to a single ink combination. Uh, I mean, this one, red blue is already pretty powerful. So, I don't know why they're getting all the juice. But for some of those less loved colors like red green or green yellow or sapphire
Amber.
amber, now you can print an amber card that is going to be really good in this deck, uh, but can't be played in amber steel.
Yep.
um, and it's just another way to balance the game, I think, from a game design standpoint, and give you another axis with which you can kind of balance a card. You can make more powerful cards, and now they can be inkable because
Mhm.
that's one of the main ways that they balance cards currently is by the card's inkability. But uninkable cards are so restricting in your deck building, and so I'm looking forward to seeing cards that are balanced along a different axis.
Yeah, no, I'm so excited that we got dual ink cards. This is super cool. I love both of the abilities on this card. I can definitely see it in a more. Uh-oh.
I lost you.
Uh, I think I'm still here. My camera cut out, but I should still be here. Ha! I'm back. Hello. It's weird camera issues. I got too excited and my camera decided, nope, we're done. So as I was saying, I'm super excited about this card. It does open itself up to a lot more uh, combo potential in this particular ink color. You can definitely play this in something like kind of an Oswald item queen sort of
Yep.
spam shell, which is super cool. And yeah, I fully agree with that. This lets you print way more powerful cards because now they're restricted specifically by the deck building constrictions that already exist in this game, right? There's a specific rule in the actual comprehensive rules that a deck can only consist of two specific colors, and cards can only be of those colors in that deck. So that immediately and it reads something like it's based on the colors that are on the card on the actual color symbol. This card has two of them, red and blue. So that means you can't splash it into something like blue steel. You can't splash it into something like blue yellow or any of the other colors where you would want to try to splash something like this. Now you can't, right? You were saying it's a good way to balance the game. I fully agree. um yeah, this is just super cool, especially as a Floodborne shift card. Super great. And yeah, I'm just super excited. We were right. We got dueling cards. They're super cool. This is going to open up a bunch more combos and potentials. As somebody who's very much loved trying to make red green work, I'm super hopeful they're going to be nice to me this set and give me something that makes that deck work. But we'll find out. We've still got, we've still got a lot more cards to come. But yeah, I'm super excited. This looks great.
It also seems like we're going to learn a lot more on February 10th. I think there's going to be more details coming. It sounds like um, we're going to get an abbreviated card reveal season for this set, and I think this is probably partially why, because there's this big mechanic that they're introducing in terms of these new dual ink colors, and so um, releasing that kind of thing too far in advance. I think it just makes a little bit more sense to have it be released a little bit closer to the set. We're about 6 weeks away from um, Archazia's Island, which is crazy. The game keeps coming, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. My pocketbook needs to catch up at some point.
Mm-hmm. My poor wallet
Um,
feels it.
yeah, but I'm super excited for this and for everything else we're going to learn as part of Arcasia's Island. All right, let's move into our judge segment. So the judge segment today, you sent this one over to me, and this is kind of an interesting interaction that is in this set in particular. We've started to see it, and it has to do with two locations. So we've got Sugar Rush Speedway starting line, and we've got the library. And the library has seen a lot more play in recent weeks, thanks in part to Ed winning nationals with it. We've also got Diablo. Diablo is a one cost 0/1. When this character is banished, you may draw a card. Now, to use Sugar Rush Speedway's ability and move Diablo for free into the library, you have to exert Diablo and deal a damage to it to move it to the other location for free.
Mm-hmm.
So the question here is, when I use that ability to move to Diablo, do I get to draw one card or two?
Yeah, so this one's really interesting and has to do with the way the game currently checks kind of the status of a card. Um, so this is another really interesting one. So in this case, your Diablo would be dry. You've already played it the previous turn. You've now moved it to Sugar Rush Speedway, and therefore you exert it to activate Speedway's effect. It'll deal the damage. Um, the effect of Sugar Rush Speedway still has to continue resolving, so it means it's going to move it to the library. Diablo will then be moved to the library. Speedway will finish resolving its ability. The game will now check for anything else that is outstanding, which includes characters with damage equal to their amount of willpower. In this case, Diablo has 1 damage and 1 willpower, so it'll be banished due to, uh, game state check, as it's called in the comprehensive rules. And then because Diablo is now at the library because of the effect of Sugar Rush Speedway, you will not only get the 1 card for Diablo's effect, you will also get the card for library. It's a really kind of intricate thing that makes sense on the face. It's just you have to remember that your Speedway has to finish resolving, so Diablo doesn't ever get a chance to just be by itself with no effects in the bag, to kind of resolve the fact that it now has damage equal to its willpower. And it's a nice way to draw 2 cards.
Yeah. Pretty interesting interaction, and you would maybe think that it wouldn't make it over to the library because it would take that damage, but the important thing is that the game state check doesn't happen until after Sugar Rush Speedway's ability is done resolving, at which point Diablo is at the library.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty interesting. All right. With that, let's go ahead and kind of move into our main topic. I know there's been a couple other videos about this. I know the Forbidden Mountain did one, and I also know that Jonathan Williams was on Zan's podcast this last week to talk about it. But there were some disqualifications at nationals, and I think it's raised some concerns from different areas in the community about, uh, various things about transparency, about the integrity of the game, about um, rule changes. There were some last minute rule changes that were kind of announced day of. Players were told that they couldn't split. There was at least one disqualification where Chris Oyola talked about it in the Lore 20 Discord, where he was essentially disqualified because his opponent offered to concede, and Chris didn't acknowledge it, but was kind of hoping that the judges would step in. The judges didn't, and then when they eventually did step in, um, they disqualified both of the players. So they were being very, very rigid on that approach, or on that the rule of trying to avoid people splitting and not playing
Mm-hmm.
certain rounds. Which, on one hand, I really support. I kind of hate the I don't know. As a new player coming to the game, it's been frustrating to me that you can go to a set championship and you can play in this high value tournament, and people can just win 3 games and then stop playing Lorcana for the rest of the day until the top 8.
Mm-hmm.
And it really makes it a lot harder for people who lose their first couple of games to come back and be a part of the conversation to make top cut.
Mm-hmm.
So on one hand, I really like that. I think where there's been some pushback is that this was not the standard that the EU was held to just 1 month before. I think there's also the conversation about judges are implementing policy, or PPG or Ravensburger is implementing policy to try to fix one of the problems caused by the 2 game format. But from my perspective, it's not necessarily just caused by 2 game format. Like, the same problem exists in best of 3, because players can win 3 games and then just ID their
Mm-hmm.
way to top cut. So if we end up going back to best of 3, I'd like to see this kind of policy held so that you can't just ID your way after winning 3 rounds in best of 3, because that's happening too. It's not just happening in 2 game format; it's happening in 3 game format. Before we dive into some of the other disqualifications, what are your thoughts on this one, on intentional splitting, and kind of the um, issues kind of caused by the format right now.
Sure. I mean, I will cop to that. I've someone that did that. That's how I got. Right. There was a point in Seattle where I just started playing what were functionally best of ones, which is just right. Hey, I'm trying to get my Let It Go promo. I'm willing to play at least one game. And then because if I lose that game, then I'm out of the contention. So I'm happy to concede my next game, right, and stuff like that. And yeah, the point of this game is to play the game. The fact that that's become kind of the norm is to get to a place where you either play best of ones or you play until you can start IDing. Kind of sucks. Like, I I'm aware that it is a thing you do at a competitive level. I just think it's a kind of dumb practice. Like, the point of the game is to play the game. And I don't, I say that as somebody who's had a little bit of success. I just won set champs. I won my Let It Go. I've done decently well at these tournaments. I understand that is the practice. I think it's very silly in a thing where the point of the game, at least at that level, is to play the game to prove that you are good at the game. Like,
To be a competitor,
yeah,
right?
to be a competitor, right? If I had come into this game being like, oh well, I just want to play, best of ones and like get up there quick. I mean, there's more efficient ways to do that, right? So honestly, yeah, I think this might be a good call to just be like, hey, going forward for at the very least competitive level events, we are no longer allowing splits. You must play out every game, every match. I think the other thing that feels bad in this particular situation is that it feels like this wasn't announced until like what day of or
It was a day of announcement.
yeah. So that it's one thing to implement this kind of rule, but like to give no notice for it kind of definitely throws a bunch of people off, and it seems kind of weird.
I mean, something like that, I feel like it would make uh, it would affect my deck building choices potentially.
Yeah.
I remember one of my first set championships I went to at Games of Berkeley. Um, they had announced that it was going to be best of two, I think, and then when we got there, they did best of three.
Hmm.
And I was a little upset about it because like I made a decision of what deck to bring because I knew it was best of two.
Hmm.
And if you bring blue red and you are playing a blue red mirror, it's going to be a lot harder to get 3 games in a best of three versus a 2 game format where you have a little bit more time. And so, I feel like the rules of the format, you're not just playing cards, you're also playing the format, right?
Hmm.
And you are trying to figure out how to get to top cut in the given format. And,
Hmm.
and that's why people are playing best of ones. They're not playing the game anymore. They're playing the format. Um, yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm fine with the rule change. I think not announcing it till day of was a little bit of a bad look, and I think that's been one of the problems with PBG and Ravensburger and all of this high level tournament play is that there's a lack of communication that has a really big impact on players. And I think, um, whether it's the lack of information about worlds,
Hmm.
whether it's, these kinds of rule changes, I think it's really hard for players who spend a lot of their life playing this game or practicing to play this game at a high level, um, to not feel like you are in control of the variables that will lead to your success or your failure.
Hmm.
It definitely, I think, is a bit of feels bad. I think the other piece about this, and I kind of followed some of the conversation in the 20 lore Discord, but I think this situation really put Chris in a position where Chris felt like he had to be a snitch,
Hmm.
and effectively tattle, um, to bring this to the judge's attention. Um, in this particular instance, the player didn't even uh, offer to concede in exchange for
Hmm.
anything. He just said he was going to concede. Um, and so I think there's just a lot of gray area right now, and there's a lot that is open for interpretation.
Mhm.
And I think Chris was held to a standard where he had to report, which, if you read the comprehensive game rules and the play correction guidelines and the tournament rules, not reporting if your opponent offers to concede in exchange for something is something you have to report. But if
Mhm.
your opponent just offers to concede, uh, effectively doing what they do to navigate around a best of one,
Mhm.
there's no requirement to report currently in current written tournament guidelines.
Mhm.
Um, and so I think that was also a bit of a feels bad moment in that specific situation.
No, yeah, the honestly, yeah, at that level, I definitely also heard, speaking of PPG and some weird communications and some weird interactions, I was definitely also hearing, other stories where that was just like, yeah, at some point this went missing, and then I tried to report it to somebody, and then they said I was fine, and then later they came back and they deck checked me, and I got disqualified for it, and it's like, wait, hang on, right? There was a lot of that. It seemed like that weekend of were moments where communication was tried and attempted, and some players thought they were okay, and then later on in the day they were approached by a judge, or they were DQ'd, or honestly, the whole thing turned out to be kind of a bad look for PPG because there was just a lot of communication errors. There was not a lot of good guidance for, hey, here's what's going on. And anytime players tried to kind of advocate for themselves, they got punished for it. It honestly was kind of terrible.
Even so far as like the debacle with LCQ, right? LCQ
Yeah.
didn't start for almost 2.5 hours. Like, it started 2.5 hours late,
Mm-hmm.
and they did not pair people correctly
Mm-mm.
the first time. People got put into pods alphabetically,
Mm-hmm.
so they had to reset them and resend them out. I still got paired with my wife, or not paired with my wife, but like in the same pod as my wife, which did feel bad. Um, we ended up both losing round one, so it didn't matter, but would have felt bad. Um, and there were players that didn't get paired and were told that they had a bye, and they checked in with the judge, and the judge said it was fine. And they went to go get some food or do whatever, and then later they were disqualified and yanked.
Yep.
Um, I have heard now at least 4 instances of this happening. I
Mm-hmm.
know it happened to somebody that we know personally,
Mm-hmm.
but I saw a YouTube video from somebody else who it happened to,
Mm-hmm.
who quoted that there were at least 4 people. And uh, that's just inexcusable. It really is. People come to the event, they spend their hard-earned money on a plane ticket, on a hotel, on expensive park food, or expensive restaurants, near uh, the downtown Disney area,
Mm-hmm.
and they lose their opportunity to no fault of their own,
Mm-hmm.
to an organizational failure. Um, and I know that they were compensated, that they were given extra promos, that they were, had their tickets refunded, etc. But um, it's not about the money for a lot of players, right? It's about
It's
the
not.
chance to compete at that level and to prove yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And um, when you have that chance taken away from you, I think, um, again, it's just a feels bad moment. And
Yeah.
like, if there are enough feels bad moments, people are going to start to vote with their feet.
Yeah. People are going to start voting with their feet, voting with their wallet. They're going to start spreading word of mouth. It's not a good look. It's really not. Yeah, it's just kind of insane to me, right? That you had that, it was bad enough when it happened to our friend, and I figured that was a one of, and then to later learn that, yeah, it was like 5, 6 people. That nope, this just happened to a bunch of people. Like that's an insane number, especially when you consider that the pods are supposed to be exactly 32 people. Like that's just how they're structured.
Yeah.
So, like, that's just crazy. So hopefully this gets fixed for future events. Hopefully, this was just kind of a one of, hey, this is the first time we're doing this. This is kind of, with all the madness that is fires and blizzards and plane tickets and things, that this doesn't happen in the future. But this is definitely a thing to look out for. And this is definitely a thing I think we probably want to keep an eye on just in case, because this is, it's not a thing that should happen. It's just honestly not a thing that should happen.
Yeah. I think, the thing I'm learning from all of this and is you just have to be really careful,
Mm-hmm.
and you are going to have to chase down a judge and chase down a tournament official and uh, hold them to
Mm-hmm.
like fixing the problem and
Mm-hmm.
getting you paired into someone, and whatever it is, right? um, and you're going to have to speak up, and uh, it's not ideal. um, but I think you also have to be really careful about what you say, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, these are high emotional, high pressure situations. You're dealing with authority figures, um, ultimately, who have the power to take away your chance at this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's my biggest takeaway from uh, Jonathan Williams's disqualification. He was on Zan's podcast and
Podcast. Mm-hmm.
kind of went through it. I know he had his own YouTube video, and there were some questions that kind of came out of it. But after listening to the interview with Zan and listening to the questions that were asked and the way that he answered them, it's pretty clear to me that there was no malice in any of his um, actions.
Mm-hmm.
I think essentially what happened to him is round three, right before lunch, he played an opponent, got up, packed his stuff up, and dropped a card on the floor, dropped a Maui Shark. 2 rounds later, he was deck checked, and the judges asked him uh, about the missing card. How long has it been missing? And the way that Jonathan, responded, um, I think there's some people that feel like he was being intentionally dishonest.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the way it sounds to me is that he largely said, I think I had it last round. Maybe it was the round before, but I'm pretty sure it was last round. They went and talked to his last round opponent. Um, it was not his last round opponent. It was the round before that, because they've had the card. It was turned in to the judges. And, um, I we talk a lot about interactions with police and,
Hmm.
the way that you know, not answer any questions until your lawyer is present, or if you're under oath, I do not recall.
Mm-hmm.
um, and it really seems like that's the advice going forward, is if you're ever in a situation like that, the best thing you can answer is I don't know, because you risk unintentionally misremembering or
Mm-hmm.
unintentionally conveying the facts not as they are,
Mm-hmm.
and being penalized for lying to a tournament official.
Yeah.
And that's also a feels bad,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, you're trying to do the right thing. You're trying to answer the question as best as you can, and you answer it in a way that can be held against you.
Yeah. That's just it feels really bad, and it's not a thing we generally expect out of the hobbies we've come to love and enjoy. So, all in all, just kind of a weird experience.
Yeah. I'm hoping that things will be better at Worlds.
Mm-hmm.
I know you and I were talking. I don't know if PPG is going to be in charge of Worlds, or when their contract ends, or whatever. I know they could be replaced. There are other big tournament organizers here in the states. I know SCG
Star City Games. Mm-hmm.
Star City Games is one that has been kind of tossed around. They throw a lot of tournaments and a lot of conventions, and people seem to be really happy with the way that they throw their events and the way that they've kind of talked about issues. I think there was an issue that happened at one of their tournaments, maybe 6 months ago, and there was just like a really transparent like post on Twitter about it.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I think that is the kind of transparency that people would like to see from PPG and Ravensburger here, and they're not getting it. And I think that's been one of the things that has stood out to a lot of people is because we're not getting any sort of official statement. We're left to just kind of guess, or and we have to take the players' accounts for what they are. And um, I understand not wanting to put full statements or um, go into details about what could be a private matter or a personal matter, but
Mhm.
I think being able to point to a rule or point to a reason and say this is why this person got disqualified
Mhm.
would go a long way to making people feel a little bit less worried about how they might be treated in the future.
Mhm. For sure. Um, Definitely, this is another one of those things where we were talking about like communication is a thing that they should probably figure out. This is another one of those things where like, hey, even just a small communication or communique of like, hey, here's our stance on things. Here's what's going on, would clear up a lot of the uncertainty and a lot of the kind of mistrust that the community has now sort of developed because of these issues. But we've got time until the next big event comes up, so who knows? Maybe they'll release something. Maybe we'll get more guidance for what they're doing. That's the hope, right? Is either PPG gets their act together, or we end up with a new organizer, and we see how that works.
Yeah. Well, exciting times. Either way, there's a lot to look forward to this year when it comes to Lorcana. Hopefully, we'll get news about World soon and about upcoming DLCs.
Hmm.
Hopefully, DLCs will start again at some point here this year.
Hmm.
I know that people always want something to strive for and something to look forward to, and I'm looking forward to what's next. I'm hoping we learn it sooner rather than later, because I want to go to more DLCs and
Yeah.
play these large tournaments. So, all right. Well, with that, we'll end this episode here, and thanks for joining us, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye, everybody.